Welcome to Clause 8, the #1 podcast on intellectual property, trusted by top in-house counsel, judges, and policymakers worldwide. Hosted by Eli Mazour, we bring you in-depth conversations with the personality shaping IP. Brought to you by TradeSpace, where ideas take flight.
The first thing you bring up about, the changes at the PTAB, at the USPTO, I guess I do hear this narrative that, attorneys don't know what to do. It's so complicated, but I don't know how much of it is that people don't like the changes or it is that way. So on that, so Dani, what is your impression, I guess, from covering it?
I think that the frustration over the changes are separate from the frustration over what they could mean. Yeah. I think people trying to keep up with what's happening are just like, how do I, do this when suddenly something is happening? And it's no longer the same as it was yesterday. And for some people, that is great in terms of, what happened yesterday is better for me. And for some people, it's like, this just made things worse, but it doesn't change the fact on either that, the petition you drew up today might have to be entirely redone tomorrow.
Michael, you mentioned some of the Federal Circuit, appeals going on related to fintech factors. Anything else, any other big stories that you're kind of thinking about and following or interested in?
So I know I'm repeating myself, but really the interplay between the PTO, PTAB, and the acting director right now, and just the Federal Circuit, which may or may not curb her discretion. That's just a huge story and is top of mind. I'm sure there's some other things that are going on that I'm tracking that I'm forgetting. But that's story number 1, 2, and 3 right now.
For me, it's a lot of what Dani said in terms of stuff. We cannot keep up with the number of cases that are coming out on the discretionary denial. But that's obviously of interest. So I try to, when there's one that, contains a new fact, like there was the other day, there was a decision where I think it was the youngest patent that was just 6 years old that got the benefit of the settled expectations doctrine. So we'll try to report on those kinds of things, but that's definitely a big one. But I really love what's happening in Congress and following, some of the bills and even at the administration level, one thing that I'm curious about how it's all going to pan out is the Trump executive order on most favored nation and drug pricing generally, it's sort of like patent adjacent, but it's very relevant to patent owners and the pharma community because patents do get blamed for drug prices directly. And so it's something that I pay attention to and that at the pharmaceutical community of our readers, they're very interested in that topic. And I find it fun to cover that kind of stuff, the policy side stuff.
You mentioned, obviously, your audience, when you think of your readership, you think of the Capitol Hill staffers. You mentioned following the bills on there. So I'm curious, I think we all know, the big bills were circulating, the 101 bill, the PTAB bill, and the injunction bill. And it seemed like there was a lot of enthusiasm in the beginning of this Congress. And then Senator Tillis announces he's retiring. Eileen, do you, have you heard anything that you kind of think, how's that all going to shake out, I guess?
Not directly. There may well still be people who are going to take up that torch, I think. Coons is very much a part of that and will be around. I think there's just way too much going on. I don't know when those bills will come back to bear. And it's, I think it was a long shot anyway, even though they did move pretty far in the last session. But I think whether they're going to be reintroduced. They might be reintroduced, but in terms of them passing, I think it's questionable. There's a lot of other stuff that people are interested in right now. So I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard anything specifically.
I would pay more attention to Congress if I thought either the defense bar or the inventor side folks had the votes to do anything.
Yeah.
I think it is interesting because there's messaging about what changes and reforms there should be to the system, and there's a lot of hard work that goes on, and I don't take away from that at all. The hearings are interesting, topics are interesting, and where different members stand, to the extent they are in the weeds at all on patent law, is interesting as well. But I think the House committee and the Senate committee are just politically in different places, and it amazes me to some extent that there was such kind of a huge legislative change back in 2011, because we're so far from it now. It's like, how could that have how could they have gotten all these people?
It took ages, though, right? It took
right, and that was forever and ever, and there were a lot of things that motivated it.
And I guess when you see that they're in different places, the House and the Senate, you're saying like there's not a lot of activity in the House. Is that kind of the?
Well, I mean, the bills that I think we're talking about, some of them got passed out of committee on the Senate side.
Yeah, prevailed.
But I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember.
No, you are correct.
Maybe even them getting a hearing on the House committee, and they would need to if those were going to become the law.
Yeah, I think we're still looking for enthusiasts. I think there's also a dynamic, obviously, in the House where the chair of the IP committee is not a fan of these bills. So.
Right. Yeah, I think Congressman Issa sees things differently from Senator Coons or Senator Tillis, and Tillis is retiring. Coons is no longer ranking. So there's been a lot of change on the Senate committee.
Yeah, and when I interviewed actually John Lee, who's advises their life on these, I guess, on IP issues, he said that for anything to happen, all four members of Congress from both sides have to agree on something, and I guess that's difficult in this dynamic.
It could happen, and we should pay attention to these places because there's a lot of power there. But so maybe I was a little cavalier at the start of this conversation, but
no, you're right.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that, and probably you see, I found interesting that the USPTO pays a lot of attention to what I guess members on the Hill want, and you see these letters going. But from what I understand, it's actually behind the scenes. Before they send one of these letters, they say, "I'm going to send this letter, but I want you to do this," and the USPTO then kind of pays away to do that. So they do have, I guess, an impact indirectly like that. One of the stories that I know all of you were covering and looking into and broke pieces of it, so dramatically, is the selection of the USPTO Director. But I want to talk about that, like, before we talk about, what happened this time around. I just find that whole dynamic kind of fascinating and interesting because you see all these names floated around, nobody knows where they come from, and then somebody gets chosen, and then you don't get really the full story about how all that happens. But I mean, from your vantage point, can you kind of share just what is it like covering the selection of the USPTO Director and everything that goes around that?
I got really lucky on this one because I didn't have to speculate for very long. Fortunately had, a lot of good sources who were able to clue me in very quickly to what was happening. So it didn't have to be too much of a guessing game. But it was just until then kind of, every time you were on the phone with somebody being like, have you heard anything? And there were, 3 or 4 names that kept coming around. None of them were Squires.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty much just like constantly asking until somebody that you talked to enough was like, hey, I finally figured it out.
Yeah, and I imagine, I guess, you don't have to say anything, but reading your reporting, I guess maybe you've talked to people who are worried about it, about the selection. and others who might be happy about it. But you see this dynamic where obviously some people want their name floated because, their friends basically write about them, and they're like, who's this person? But I guess, do you get that a lot where like people are pitching you that they're being floated, or not maybe directly or indirectly? Do you get that or no?
No, the closest I got was that a PR person reached out to me and said, hey, this person at our firm has been selected, and he's available to talk today. And someone I knew already, so I called him and I'm like, you're the new director? And he's like, no, my name is just on a whiteboard somewhere. And I'm being considered for it. That was a very bizarre conversation. I'm sure that PR person did not have a fun night.
I had heard not that long before Squires was the nominee that Coke might really have a chance, and that it might be her. And so it was a surprise a little bit, but yeah, not too surprising when I think he's pretty good friends with Lutnick, and so yeah, it's but it came a little bit out of the blue for me. I hadn't really heard about him that much until it happened. So